part that I'm speculating. Okay? Now you take what I'm going to say with as big a grain of salt as you want. But this is speculation, but this is, I think, more or less what happened. The Russians, they saw this. Now, they knew that they had no intention of invading Ukraine in October of 2021, okay? But they must have figured, what are these fucking Americans up to? Let's play along. You got to remember, see, Vladimir Putin, the man Vladimir Putin, right? He is not a chess player because the Russians love their chess. I mean, they love it, and they learn it when they're little kids. And it's not just Russia, but also Ukraine and Belarus. I mean, all the ethnic Russian people, for some reason, they fucking love it. Oh yeah, my father-in-law is teaching my kids who are little how to play chess, and they're into it. It's a weird little habit, so it doesn't matter. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly harmless. But everybody thinks that Russians are great chess masters, and they are. But see, Putin is not into chess. He's into judo. I mean, he said repeatedly that for him, judo was a lifesaver. He was a little bit of a juvenile delinquent until he discovered judo when he was like 13 or 14, and he got into it in a big way. The way a 14-year-old will get into anything in a big way. And he pursued judo very, very diligently, and he got to be pretty good at it. And what's the whole principle of judo? It's two things. Number one, using your enemy's force against him. And the other is decisiveness. Now, these are two very, very important qualities. Using your enemy's force against him and decisiveness. Okay? Now, I once saw something really charming, I thought. It was a video of Vladimir Putin in a judo outfit. And this scrawny little kid, he must have been like I'd say maybe 11 or 12 years old, but before, hitting puberty, still a boy, right? Not quite a young man. And this boy is also dressed up in his little judo outfit, and he's noticeably shorter and smaller and lighter, I mean, like half as wide as Vladimir Putin, and Putin is not a thick man. He's not, he's not fat, and quite a bit shorter, and this boy grabs Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, and flips him. It's kind of adorable. And you see, I thought it was very funny because Vladimir Putin's face is completely impassive during the whole operation, where this small boy takes him and executes very perfectly the judo move of flipping your opponent over. And Vladimir Putin being somebody who's done this for years, he knows exactly what's happening. I mean, it wasn't like a humiliation of it. It was just practice, right? And what's interesting is that, see, that boy was carrying out something key in judo, which is decisiveness, see? Because, you see, the boy was, a slim young man, a slim boy. He must have been maybe a third of the weight of the adult Vladimir Putin. And see, if the boy had hesitated in the middle of the move, Vladimir Putin, just because by virtue of his weight, okay, no intention whatsoever, would have crushed him. If the boy had flipped him and flipped him and right in the middle had kind of hesitated, the body of Vladimir Putin would have been heavy enough to just, fall on top of the poor boy, potentially hurt him. And that's the point of judo. In judo, they teach you, I took a couple of classes when I was a boy, that what you have to do is be decisive. You grab the guy and you flip him, okay? Once you decide that what you're going to do it. And do it smoothly, efficiently, quickly, decisively. Excuse me. Oopa. Sorry about that. Hang on. And by the way, do you guys hear me properly? Hit me with a +1 if you guys can hear me properly. Yeah, no choking. COVID, I don't know. How many people are watching? 4,500. Dude, that's pretty good. +1, you guys hear me properly? Okay, good. Yeah, so anyway, like I was saying, judo teaches you to use your enemy's force against him and teaches you to be decisive. Okay. So in November 2021, there's all this talk that of a Russian military buildup. My suspicion is that the Russians had no intention and no interest in any kind of military buildup, but they went along with it to see, like, where's this shit going? And what they discovered all of a sudden is that everybody started getting hysterical about this so-called military buildup, even though there really wasn't any evidence for it in November of 2021 at any rate, not real evidence. I mean, it was like saying that the Americans are planning to invade Mexico because they have a whole bunch of troops amassing at Fort Bragg, Georgia. And you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's a regular base. And besides, it's really fucking far away from Mexico. No, 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 no. The soldiers at Fort Bragg are going to invade Mexico. And you're like, okay, let's see where this shit goes. I mean, I suspect that was the mentality of the Russians. And what happened was that all of a sudden, they discovered that the Europeans and the Americans had different priorities. See? The Americans were all hell-bent for leather on like trying to split the Russians from the Europeans. And the Europeans all of a sudden found out that they needed Russia's natural gas because their own energy policy had been so short-sighted that they had an energy deficit that could only be plugged by Russian natural gas. And so what happened was that the Kremlin, Putin and the whole group, the whole leadership class of Russia, they realized that they could diplomatically split the Europeans from the Americans. And they started acting in that direction of creating the conditions whereby the Europeans and the Americans would split because they had different interests. And they kind of succeeded, okay? But the hysteria kept on going. And anyway, in December of 2021, the Russians decided to use this diplomatic weakness to see if they could get some concessions. And the number one concession that they wanted was a halt to NATO expansion, number one. That's always been a priority for them. Number two, the indivisibility of security, which is a concept whereby no country's security should be arrived at by creating insecurity for another, okay? That European security had to be integrated, not like individualized, because that would just lead to a constant battle, an arms race, if you will. So it had to be an indivisibility of security. And the third thing that they wanted was a rollback of NATO to, I think it was 1997 borders. It might have been something like that. It doesn't matter. And the point is, see, the Russians floated these ideas, thinking, this is the best chance we'll ever get to see if we get what we want. And the Americans and NATO didn't just throw away these, NATO did. NATO delivered a response that was juvenile and ideological and fucking insane, if you think about it, and fucking sophomoric. I mean, you got to read that fucking thing. But anyway. It's not important. The important thing is that, see, the Americans kind of like, sort of like, oh, well, maybe, and they kept like kind of like dangling in front of the Russians the possibility of a diplomatic solution, right? And the Russians kind of like went along with this to see if they'd get it. And then all of a sudden they realized, we're never going to get anything from these guys because these guys, the Americans, you can't trust them. And that's the bottom line. The Russians realized in their bones that they could never trust the Americans. The Russians realized in their bones that they could never trust the Americans. And any agreement that they arrived at with the Americans would break it. Which is accurate, okay? I mean, shit, Donald Trump, who unilaterally and for no fucking reason whatsoever got out of the intermediate range ballistic missile treaty that was negotiated during the time of Ronald Reagan and was in fact a linchpin of the collective security of Europe. I mean, and Donald Trump, fucking idiot to have done that. He just undermined European security for no fucking reason. He just wanted to we can negotiate a better deal, look at my orange hair, duh, fuck you. Anyway, God, I fucking hate that guy because he's a fucking moron. Okay, yeah, he's a fucking idiot, and he's weak. That's the thing I despise. He's weak. I could accept if he's stupid, but he's weak. I can't. Yeah, I mean, you can work with a person who's stupid. You can't work with somebody who's weak. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, Putin realized, man, these fucking Americans. There's no way to get anything done with these fuckers. And what happened was that the Europeans and the Americans kept egging on Ukraine, and Ukraine under Zelensky. Zelensky is a regime. They're ugly people. Zelensky has no problem repressing any criticism of his. He has shut down TV channels and persecuted journalists who are critical of him. He's persecuted political opponents, used the powers of the state to go after them. I mean, the guy is not the nicest guy in the world. He's not a white hat, okay? He's an ugly character. And so, anyway, Ukraine kept on poking the bear and provoking the Russians, thinking that they had Europe and the Americans at their back. And then what happened finally was that, see, they kept on provoking the Russians. And the Russians finally said, you know, fuck it. They keep saying that we're going to invade. Let's fucking invade already. I think that that was basically it. And I think also too, and it's actually been proven. This part I'm gonna say originally was my speculation, but it has proven to be true. And my speculation, which I arrived at the very start of this war and was confirmed a couple of days ago, was that when there was the Munich summit with all the leaders, you know, talking about all kinds of diplomatic bullshit, and Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, started floating the idea that Ukraine should reacquire nuclear weapons and nuclear missiles to protect itself. And none of the other leaders of the Western democracies there said a peep, said how fucking insane that idea was. Because who are the Ukrainians going to use those nuclear weapons against? The Russians, the only ones, right? What, they're going to shoot them at the fucking Hungarians or the Moldovans or some shit like that? Come on. And so all of a sudden, the Russians start hearing this shit, and they realize, you know, these fuckers are crazy. They're fucking fools. And if we don't take the driver's seat insofar as Ukraine, we're going to wake up one morning with these fucking crazy-ass Ukrainians with nuclear weapons. Either their own or NATO nuclear weapons. Fuck that. That's why they invaded. That's the story, okay? They realized that they could not reach any kind of diplomatic agreement with the West, and that Ukraine, goaded by the West, led up the garden path by the West, was going to provoke Russia and potentially, you know, now, I mean, in March of, or rather February of 2022, the Ukrainian army started lobbing shells at the Donetsk People's Republic and the Lugansk People's Republic, and some of those shells started landing in Russia, and the Russians started realizing, you know, these fuckers might start lobbing shells